The Quintessential Show. Quintessentially South African.
It is the Quintessential Show right here on Quintessential ZA, proudly brought to you by. And yes, you know, we talk to the movers and shakers on this show, and I needed to get these guys on the minute I heard their little Bloomberg piece that they put out there. Psilocybin, the first South African-based company who was the first to obtain a license from the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, which is SAHPRA, to cultivate, extract, manufacture, import, export, and distribute cannabis and cannabis-derived products. This sounds quite crazy, so I brought their CEO into the Quintessential Show. Movers and shakers, it's Gabriel Theron. Hello, Gabriel.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good, and you? How high are you right now?
That's an old one.
Yes, yeah, sorry, man.
No.
You know, I had to do it.
Yeah.
I had to do it.
No worries. So where do we go from here?
Well, Gabriel, at this point in our conversation, I quickly want to pan to a video for our audience to show them this incredible room that you guys have. As far as the eye can see, an entire indoor field, apparently of Durban poison. Is this true? Do you have a whole room full of Durban poison?
We've got a few rooms of Durban poison, but yes.
Yes, man. That used to be, you know, a scene like that, a full room full of marijuana. It used to be, something that would be accompanied by police before, you know, on the news, where they would say, we've done a raid on someone, but now it's all legal. Give me a brief history of psilocybin from founding to where you guys are today, where you have this incredible room.
Okay, so it's been a incredible journey. So what happened basically, and people will probably think I'm crazy, and it's been luck. I'll tell you that. So basically, what happened? 2018 July, I was sitting on my bed and I was in between different jobs, if I could call it that. It's a terrible term to use, but I just finished up as a CEO of Africa's third largest forestry company. And I didn't want to go back to, I used to run a advertising agency, and I didn't want to go back to that. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was sitting on my bed and I saw on YouTube a video of an indoor grow facility. And I told my wife, you know what, that's what I want to do. And she said, well, go for it. And that was the Wednesday. The next Sunday, I found myself in San Jose at a cannabis conference. And let me just explain to you. At this point in time, I knew nothing about cannabis. Nothing. I ate it once or twice in my life before. Had a good experience from that. But in terms of the science behind it, knew nothing. So just before I left, I asked a friend just to give me the rundown as how does cannabis work? And they explained, this is THC, it's a psychoactive, this is CBD, it's got all these properties, medicinal, whatever. So that was the knowledge I went to America with. So I got there, and the first day, Sunday, they had an A to Z of cannabis. And I was in this conference room, lecturer, not a lot of us, and a presenter, and I asked a couple of questions, and obviously with the South African accent, in one of the breaks, this one American guy approached me, and he said to me, dude, are you from South Africa? I'm like, yes. So he's like, there's a strain in South Africa called Durban poison. Do you know it? So I'm like, yeah, of course. So he's like, there's a cannabinoid that's in the strain, and it's called Durban poison. It's called THCV. So I'm like, oh, okay. So he's like, can you find it? I'm like, dude, of course. So that's where that relationship was born.
Wow.
3 days later, I find myself so this was in San Jose. I find myself in Austin, Texas, in his house, and he's explaining to me biohacking. I don't know if you're familiar with biohacking.
Well, I mean, it takes on many forms, I hear.
Unbelievable. So the first thing first, he's like, let me show you this ring. So I also have one of these, that ring.
Yeah.
And it's like, it measures your sleep. So this is the best technology for sleep monitoring. So he's like, I use this to do da 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 da. So I'm like, no, that's awesome. So he's like, let me show you this one room. So he shows me this room, and there's earth mats and there's all these different tech. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. He's like, no, but let me show you this. And shows me an infrared sauna. And he's like, you use this to detoxify, get all of your heavy metals out and all of that. So he's like, but let me show you the best. So he walks into his dressing room. He pulls these boxes down, he puts it in the middle, and he throws it on the table. And it's literally LSD, ketamine, cannabis, various vapes. What else? There was like literally, like anything you can think of.
Did you consider going like maybe running out of the room? You thought maybe he might inject you with something soon.
So I phoned my wife. I'm like, oh my word, I'm staying with the biggest druggies I've ever met. So long story short, so they explained to me. So he says, now I'm going to bring one of my friends over later. So this guy pitches up there, and he's a dentist. And he's like, no, I just went for an NAD drip. And before that, I did cryotherapy. I was submerged in an ice bath. And, it's actually cool. But when you go for the NAD drip, what you need to do is you need to just give yourself a little bit of ketamine, because I'm just like, oh my word, where am I?
Yeah.
Anyway, so long story short, got introduced to biohacking.
Okay.
Today, that is one of the pillars that psilocybin is built on. So we are built on 3 principles, which is basically pharmaceutical, which is anything derived from like chemicals, if you think about it that way. Mm-hmm. Biotech, which is anything where you derive it from a biological form, so a plant or an animal or whatever the case. And then lastly, biohacking, which is, in layman's terms, it's the pursuit of using or the pursuit of enhancing performance, longevity, and your health through devices, supplementation, and all types of practices like fasting and meditation and whatever you call it. So it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's what psilocybin is built on, the company. So long story short, I then came back to South Africa after that crazy trip, and decided, I need to, this is just before the announcement, if you recall, back in 2018.
Oh, okay, 2018.
2018, yeah. So this was August, and I think that November that the Constitutional Court had that ruling, or October, or whatever the case.
Yeah.
So then, but before that, in 2017, SAPRA already started providing a process in which people can get or apply for cannabis cultivation licenses. So came back, got a license, application, went through that, what's all needed. It is tedious. And there was a lot of confusion around it, because you need to have a responsible pharmacist that's part of this. And the pharmacist comes from a schooling where he's like, okay, if you want to put up a pharmacy, you first get them out, they come vet the area, check if there's schools or whatever close by, then you can continue to the second phase. So that's what we did. So we found a premise with nothing inside. It's a empty building. And we put our application in. We say to SAPRA, listen, guys, you can come inspect. In our mind, we're inspecting the premise, whether it's located correctly, right? So they come out, 5 people, and we sit there. It was still freezing cold. And that building is also freezing cold. But we're sitting there, and they said to us, okay, so you're going to show us around. We're like, what do you want to see? There's nothing here. It's an empty warehouse. And they were like, but that's not how it works. You need to be finished before you call us.
Sure.
And I think we read an article where the media said, no, you can on paper get approval, and then you raise your funds, you build it, and then you get them out to come do final approval. So you get a prelim. That's what an article said back in the day. They're like, no, phone us when you're done.
Damn.
So with that information, I went back, I raised funding amongst friends and family, and we basically started building. So we when I say broke ground, we started our facility, building this facility within a building.
Mm-hmm.
This was in 2019, I would say about June, we started. So we built the whole thing, got them out, and in 2020, last year, May, we got our cultivation go ahead. So there's currently, I think there's about 28 licenses in South Africa with cultivation, that specific license. So that's a cultivation license. That license basically allows you to grow cannabis, dry it, trim it, and then bulk package, and then only for export market. So you're only allowed to do bulk packaging for export market. So the second license we then applied for, we set up an entire lab inside the facility, so it's adjacent. So you literally cultivate, you dry it, you pack it, or you trim it, and then from there it goes into a lab facility where we then can extract everything. So that is your GMP license, your manufacturing license.
Tell me, when you extract these things, I've heard something like there's a golden ball of something. What is that? I've heard about this elusive gold ball.
It depends on the way you extract. So this is, this industry, it is so funny because I went to America to go learn from those guys. So I went back after that trip. I went back a few times, and I got introduced to a lot of people, and I visited plenty facilities. And the one thing is, if you say to someone, "Okay, I want to extract cannabis, what's the best method?" So there's a few, but the prominent ones are ethanol, CO2, or like a butane. So that's the prominent ones. So the one year I went, second time I went, I was asking that question, and everybody was saying, well, it depends on your end result, what you want to achieve. That's the only thing that stayed consistent. But the second year I went, they said it is supercritical CO2. It's the only way to extract. Now, understand that the guys that were saying that was the guys selling the supercritical machines, the CO2 extraction machines. No, but it is very, very, very much like that, because it's like, if you want to extract, and this is where we believe you want a full plant extract. So that's where I don't agree with the pharmaceutical route, because that's a single molecule. You take this single molecule helps for this, but it causes all of these things. Whereas if you take it as close to the original form, the better. That's my belief. And I found other people there that believe the same thing. So yes. So if you do CO2 extraction, that is, and I'll get to the golden ball now. So the CO2 extraction it's you basically run it through a CO2 machine that cools it down, and you extract the various cannabinoids. So your THC, your CBD, and what else. And then in some of these systems, you can also extract all your terpenes before you start that extraction, because your terpenes are more volatile, so they burn off, if I can put it that way. So, or you lose them through that extraction process. So some machines allow you to take it out, then you extract, and then you can put it back at the end again. But CO2 is great for vaping. So if you want to create vaping products and those type of things, awesome way to do that type of product. So the question of which way to extract depends on where you want to end up at. So if you want to end up at a recreational product, CO2 is awesome. It's quick, it's awesome. That's fine. If you want to go a medicinal product, our school of thinking says we go ethanol extraction. And there's various ways of doing ethanol extraction. And we found our own proprietary way of doing it through visiting various sites and basically taking best of various methods of ethanol extraction. And we combined it into, we can literally go from flower to end product within 2 steps. So before we start formulating. So where other people have like 2 to 3 or 4 steps to get to that same quality. So we've changed the way we extract quite a bit. Certain components standard like everybody, but then we've added a couple of tweaks. So the golden ball, to get back to that,
Because I'm seeing gold. I think when South Africans see gold, they say, we've done it again. We are the gold, the central gold maker in South Africa.
Well, they call this the new green gold, so I don't know. But I yet to see that. So, and I can promise you the other 28 licenses will tell you the same thing. It's one of the most difficult. I was speaking to another license holder this afternoon, and I said to him, this is probably one of the most difficult businesses I've started in my life.
Bloody hell.
It's been 3 years. We haven't turned 1 cent.
Wow.
So significant investment. It's hard. It is super hard to get into this business. But anyway, and it's been globally. There's a lot of guys that I know of overseas in America, for example, where it's even easier to run something like this, but where some guys are just not making it. It's unbelievably difficult. And then you have your other guys where sorry, I'm completely off topic, but I'm telling you.
We'll get back to the golden ball, but I know, I kind of think I know what you're talking about. I mean, I've seen a couple of these businesses overseas that have to burn some of their product that they don't export or something like that. I mean, you see those kind of things and you think, my word, someone could be using that kind of stuff,
Yes. See where the global market is, and I'll quickly tell you where I think the global market is going to go in the next 3 years, my view. But where the global market is, when all of these Canadian companies started investing and they raised stupid money and they put up these ridiculously big facilities, yes, the market is there. Make no mistake. The market globally is there. Your biggest problem is legislation. So the market might be ready to buy. Same here. Same in South Africa. The market is there. But and currently the problem is this market is serviced by the illegal market, by the illegal producers. So, and this is where legislation becomes a problem. But globally the market is there. But for Canada to get their product into Europe, it needs to jump through so many hoops that by the time it gets there, one, it's overpriced compared to your local market, or your illicit market. So here's the thing: Canada went and they said, okay, great, we're legalizing it, and this is the pitfall for all of the governments. Then government says, hey, we can make tax here. So what they do is they tax this. So in Canada, how it works is government buys from all the cultivators to their distribution, and they distribute to all the dispensaries now, so that they can tax. The problem now is the product that ends up in the dispensary is so expensive that it doesn't make sense for the buyer to buy it there, so they still buy in the illegal market. So that's your problem. But in terms of the global market, where it's heading is, I predict the next 24 months, what's going to happen is, and it's in that process already, a lot of the countries are becoming self-sustaining. So they legalize, and then suddenly, like in South Africa, they issue licenses, and people start putting up facilities, and they start cultivating. Currently, some of those markets, like Germany or whatever the case, are serviced by importing the product. So they will import from Canada, they'll import from wherever the case.
Sure.
In the next, I don't even think 24 months I think it's going to be sooner than 24 months. As the local producers come online, they will start servicing their own markets. So the South African guys that's got an export license currently will not get any takeoff agreements.
Wow.
And even to date, if you speak to other growers in South Africa, they will tell you we can't get takeoff. It's so difficult.
So that takeoff agreement, well, your license was based on the fact that you get a takeoff agreement, right? I mean, that's one of the prerequisites.
So that it's a letter of intent.
Okay.
So because the company will not commit legally with you. So they say, when you are licensed 1, and when you can produce the product 2 that I want, then I will buy from you, provided it's on the standard. Now, the South African regulatory standard is here, and the standard that you need to comply to is here.
Yeah.
So you might have your license, but as soon as the first problem, we don't have enough labs to test. We don't have a single lab that can test all the requirements on the standard that these guys require, which is a European standard. So you need to go to various labs to try and collate all of these results to be able to provide them something. That's the first problem. The second problem is, to get to that level of standard, you're not going to achieve it. The chances of just achieving it is very, very difficult. So we grow completely organic. When I say completely organic, no pesticides, no insecticides.
Okay.
So there's not one harmful chemical that we put on the plants ever.
Yeah.
So that is one of the things that they look at, because you don't want any of those residuals staying in your plant going forward.
Sure.
And for example, the facility is HEPA filtered air, RO water, everything is clean. It's unbelievably clean. So, but you need to comply to that standard, and your license is at that standard. So that's the bridge that needs to get, that's the gap that needs to get bridged.
Yeah.
That's the first problem that you have. So it is very difficult. And in the next 24 months, back to that point, if they don't open up the local market here, these businesses that's got licenses here will not be able to supply anywhere in the world. That's my view.
And they can't even supply, locally they can't even supply our own markets, right? Most of these guys that are licensed, I mean, you can't package up these things. Allowed. So is that a legislative hurdle as well that stands in front of you guys and other companies like you? If you wanted to become a company that actually puts together, cannabis ingredient products, you would not be able to service the South African market as it currently stands, right?
Okay. There's 2 markets you need to look at. So there's recreational and there's medicinal. So, and I'll explain the difference to you now. So recreational, you can't. There's in no legal way you can service them today. Okay. All right. Medicinal, you can. However, out of the 28, I'm calling it 28 licenses. Remember what I said to you in the beginning. It's a cultivation license that allows you to bulk export.
Yeah.
That is your limitation. All right. The second license that we now got is a manufacturing license. So that now allows us to do extraction, packaging, labeling, and then distribution. So the big difference is, the first one is a B2B. You're selling a raw material and you're exporting it. The second license is a B2B or B2C. So I can go B2B and provide them the raw material, what you call an API. So just the oil in a bulk form, and I can send it off. Or I can take that, I can formulate it, I can package it, I can label it with a brand, and then sell it to end user. All right.
Yeah, but
now,
in
how do I sell it to?
Well, in South Africa,
how do I sell it in South?
Okay, go ahead. Let's go.
Now your question is, how do we sell it in South Africa to end user?
Yeah.
So, the easy answer is, the only way, because this is a schedule. If you're talking THC, and if you're talking anything more than the allowed 600 milligrams CBD per package, all right? CBD more than that, more than 600 milligrams per package, is considered a Schedule 4, which means doctor needs to prescribe.
Wow.
THC is considered a Schedule 6, which means doctor needs to prescribe. All right. So the only way for a South African patient, because this is medicinal, to get access to cannabis in South Africa now is to go to a doctor. The doctor must register on SAPRA's website. to be able to prescribe unregistered medicine, because this is not, cannabis is not, you don't have a registered product.
Sure.
That went through clinical trials and all of that. So the doctor needs to prescribe an unregistered medicine for his patient to alleviate whatever because now you also can't lay claim on anything. So you can't say to alleviate pain, because you can't lay claim on that. There's no clinical trial. So to alleviate, to assist in the overall well-being of this patient, let's call it that. So the patient must also get registered at SAPRA. So now what will happen is the doctor will prescribe it. The patient must apply with SAPRA so that he can buy. And only then, when he's got permission, we can supply him. So that is the process.
Yeah.
It's tedious.
You see, that's why I wanted to get you on, and so we could do this step by step, because, you know, with South Africans at a braai, we go, guys, did you hear that that marijuana, it's legal now. So, you know, everyone thinks, oh, you know, okay, we can access, right? And then you have your next friend saying, shouldn't we start a startup in this sector? And then you think, man, let's try and develop that. And once you get to where you are, you see how many legislative hurdles there are, and how much wiggle room there isn't in this industry.
There's none. And the problem is, us as South Africans, we are very innovative and we are entrepreneurs at heart. Yeah. So any opportunity, people jump at it. And a lot of people are jumping at this opportunity to say, hey, we can now produce CBD oils, put it on our website, and we can sell it. It's an awesome business, and it flies. Without looking at the legislative side of it. So they just see, okay, CBD is legal, we can move it. As soon as you go over, for example, the 600 milligram mark per package, it's a Schedule 4. You're not allowed to sell a Schedule 4 online. You need to, now it's a narcotic, right? So now you need to first produce that in a GMP facility. So that it's at a specific standard. So that all the GMP facility basically gives you the license, the second license we got now is to say, whatever we produce is always going to be the same, and it's going to be at a certain grade. So as a user, when you take this, you know the dosing is going to be consistent. If you take 2 drops today, in 4 months from now, if you take 2 drops, the effect will be the same. Yeah. All right, and the product will be the same. Currently in the market, in the illegal market, there's no guarantees. What you buy today, you might take 1 drop, you'll be buggered. You might take 4 drops next month, it will do nothing, because you don't know. You also don't know how did they extract. Now, if you want to extract with ethanol, you need a license to get ethanol, food grade, right? Yeah. So government keeps tabs on who buys and who sells food grade ethanol, because it can be used for various things. So food grade ethanol is hell of expensive. I can't recall exactly how much it was, but I think it was 20 liters was like 40,000 Rand or something stupid. It's expensive. But you can now, these guys doing illegal manufacturing, if I can call it that, they won't use food grade. So they use different methods of extracting. It might be you get ethanol, but it's got a bitter taste. And the bitter taste is so that people don't use it to make these type of things, but some people make it with that. So just get over the taste. So it's going to be bitter, but you can use it. Or they might use butane, or some people use acetone. So you can imagine how bad those things are. Yeah. So the risk of and there's people, if you speak to people with cancer, you speak to people with pain and all of that, they will all tell you, I can tell you now, 7 out of 10 will tell you I'm using cannabis. Okay, sure. Where did you get it? No, someone came to me, I'm buying it from them. Okay, where was it manufactured? No, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. How did they do it? No, I don't know. So you don't know what you're putting in yourself, because you have no idea. There's no recourse for you, because you're not going to find them if something goes wrong. But anyway, so So that is the biggest problem for us in South Africa currently. Is there's a lot of people, maybe they don't understand the legislation side of things.
Yeah.
For example, I got a inquiry from someone that wanted to buy CBD isolate. And then I went on their website from Cape Town and I saw, okay, they are selling CBD products over the allowed limit and it's not in a GMP facility. So it's a big problem. It's a big risk. And your bigger problem that you have is when guys like us get in, it's the perception is there that these things don't work, or I got violently sick from it last time I used it, but you don't know what you used. There's a problem that they can damage the market, and it can be like it did nothing. It didn't help me. So it's like buying. Would you go buy a beer that's not produced by a beer company that's there on the corner and you don't know even what they used?
You see, I mean, that happened in South Africa when we had an alcohol lockdown. People started making their own concoctions, and it actually turned out that some people actually died as a result of taking them. That's not me making something up. That's just the truth. So I totally hear where you're coming from in terms of how slow this progression is, right? But that's the thing, 2012. You would have thought 2012 was cannabis's year of development, right? Like the ball was on the roll and everything. But now we're into 2021 and we're still kind of in the same place. We've just got this extra law that says, you know what, if you want to grow it in your garden at home, let it grow type of thing. And people kind of heard that, said, okay, cool, but really haven't investigated that further. But now tell me, you as a South African company, because now I've read the Bloomberg article, right? Now you as a company say you want to go and list on the JSE. Tell me what the rationality behind now pushing for the JSE while we are in the place that we are in the cannabis industry in South Africa. How will it benefit you to get an IPO together, and what does that process look like?
Okay, so when I started this business, it was about cannabis. Started cannabis business. Then I got introduced in the biohacking side. Then I did a Psilocybin trip. So my wife and I did a Psilocybin trip. So, and then everything changed. So the whole idea was build it, list it, exit, go sit on the beach somewhere. That was the idea when I started.
Like everyone's dream when they start a multinational global corporation.
Yeah. So then we did a Psilocybin trip. And if you haven't done Psilocybin, you won't understand what I'm saying to you. That was my first experience. Yeah. And it was basically like, you know what? I'm not going to build this to flog it. I'm going to build this to leave a legacy behind. And I'm not talking cannabis, I'm not talking psychedelics, I'm talking the thing that we are building is going to revolutionize how people take health or their own health into consideration. So, and we will assist them to monitor their health better, and to treat them. So there's three pillars. There's the health side of the business. Yeah. There's the performance side of the business, and then there's longevity. So that's our three main focuses. Yeah. Now, when you look at all three of those, there's the physical component and there's a mental component. And this is where psychedelics are coming in on the mental side of things. On all three of those. So if I can go into, I'm going off track, but I'm going to come back to explain to you the listing side.
Sure.
If you look at, and there's a couple of books that was given to me when I was at the biohacker's house, and he said, you must read these two books. It will change your life. Mm-hmm. The one is called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. And the other one is called Stealing Fire. Now, How to Change Your Mind takes you through the author is a 65 or whatever plus year old gentleman. Mm-hmm. he takes you through a LSD, a psilocybin, and a DMT trip.
Wow.
And he explains those to you in the utmost details. He explains, the nice thing about the book is he explains to you the whole run up from when psychedelics started all the way through to where it is today. And then he goes and he does these trips. It's a phenomenal book to listen to.
Yeah.
Or to read. I listen to these things.
Sure.
The second one is Stealing Fire, and that is about microdosing. So I don't know if you're familiar with the term of microdosing, but this is where...
I saw this in a TV show called The Good Fight, where the lawyer, she's part of a legal firm, and she starts microdosing with what somebody gives her and says this is psilocybin. So, I mean, there's already been low-level disclosure on TV shows, right, about this microdosing. So tell me more now, because this is coming into the South African purview, as far as I can see it.
Yes, it is big. And if you go to Cape Town and you go to... any one of you can go to accounting firms, lawyer firms, advertising agencies. I can tell you now, the guys are microdosing.
Wow.
I can guarantee it. So here's the thing. And I'll get back to the listing, because this is part so you can understand why the listing. Right. So the microdosing is basically when you take a psychedelic. So I'm gonna just I'll quickly explain to you 3 psychedelics. So the one is MDMA. MDMA is a party drug, everybody knows it. There's a company in America that got FDA approval now to use MDMA to treat post-traumatic stress. All right, PTSD.
Sure. Yeah.
They've got a 76% cure rate of PTSD using MDMA.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, good timing with the veterans and all that who come back from a region like Afghanistan. Good to treat them that way. Then.
Exactly, but 76% cure rate. All right.
Sure.
From a session. So there's a way that they do it. So there's a couple of run-up sessions, then they do the treatment, and then there's closing off sessions that they do with you. Interesting fact: this specific company. You cannot be a person, or what do you call it, administrator, if you have not done. Let's say, for example, you want to treat with LSD.
Yeah.
You cannot do that if you have not experienced LSD yourself. So you have to go through the process yourself before you're allowed to become a trained person. So part of your training, they take you through it. And the reason why is, if you haven't done this, you do not understand the journey that a person will go through.
Okay.
So I'll get into a bit more detail there. The second one is psilocybin, which is your active ingredient from magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
The third one is LSD, and everybody knows LSD. So the difference between those three, MDMA will have an effect on your brain and body.
Okay.
LSD and psilocybin works purely in your brain.
Sure.
All right. Any effect that you feel in your body is what you do to yourself. All right. So that's your brain making you feel hot or hyperventilate or whatever the case. That's all you. All right. Now, understanding where all of these things are going, the reason why microdosing is becoming huge. When you take a psychedelic trip, so when you take, let's say, for example, you take LSD.
Yeah.
What will happen is, on a full dose, right? Or let's say psilocybin, on a big dose. What will happen, and this is why it's very good for, like, for example, couple therapy. The first thing it does is it deactivates your prefrontal cortex. That is where your sense of time and ego is stored, or is, right?
Sure, yeah.
So now you don't have a sense of time, which means no yesterday, no worries about what happened, or worries about what's going to happen in the future. You don't have, you're just in the present. Second thing, it deactivates your ego. So you have nothing to protect as you, right?
Yeah.
Third thing, it elevates empathy. So now in a couple's environment, you can't get across to your partner because they don't understand, and they block everything and they defend. Now defenses are down, They don't have worries yesterday and today, and they are more empathetic. So now they can listen to you and understand where you're coming from. All right.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that people say is, okay, but you're on drugs and then it's going to wear off, and what then? Okay.
Then you wake up.
Yes. So that's not the case. So because what happens is your brain creates new pathways.
Okay.
So while you're on psychedelic,
I actually wanted to bring that up with you. You know, in terms of psilocybin, I mean, this is a sentence that would typically scare a person like me, saying that psilocybin acutely alters the functional connectivity of the colostrum with brain networks that support perception, memory, and attention. Now, it's my understanding that, I mean, this is obviously a new thing that occurs in your brain and then is almost permanent, right?
it is. So it creates a new pathway. So let's take a traumatic experience that you experience, right?
Yeah.
Now, the reason why it is such a big thing is whether it's depression or a traumatic experience. If something happens, there's a certain path that your brain runs. It's always, if you find a certain trigger, it triggers that pathway and you go down that path, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens now is when you go on now I'm talking not microdosing, I'm talking bigger dosing, right? What happens then is suddenly you deactivate that pathway. So now you trigger and the brain is not allowed to run that path. So now it needs to get another path to get there. So think of it this way. Here's a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Normally you would come from this side
and
you have this big mountain in front of you and it terrifies you, okay? Now the brain forces you to walk around.
Mm-hmm.
So now you come across and you come at the top of this mountain and you look down and you're like, hang on, but this is not such a big deal. You're understanding the analogy. So
sure.
Now that pathway is built. So now off these drugs, a couple of hours later, if that happens again, your brain says to you, but hang on, this is not the only path I can run. There's another path. And you remember that you were on top as well, looking down instead of looking up. Okay. And that's why it works and it heals those type of things.
Yeah.
So that's on a bigger dose. Now, if you're talking microdosing, so microdosing means exactly that. It's a small dose that it's so small that you don't feel it. How can I put this? It's almost like under. You would not realize it if you don't think about it, if that makes sense. Yeah. So what that does is you get all the benefits of more pathways formed, but you don't have the psychoactive effect. So you are more productive, more focused.
Wow.
It is phenomenal. So in that Stealing Fire book, the author said he interviewed, I think it was 20 billionaires and while writing the book. Mm-hmm. And he says every single one of them confessed that they use some form or the other psychedelic.
Wow.
So to improve performance, their creativity, just a mood lifter. So you can just lift your mood through it.
Look, I mean, in a South African sense, you know, you mentioned attention and working and that kind of stuff. I mean, I've been to university and I've seen that a lot of people abuse certain substances to keep themselves awake and alert, and then then on these campuses there's like a network that develops, and people are, you know, giving each other certain pills or
yes.
You know, potions.
Those things are super bad. When you come off those things, people go into depression. Yeah. They go into all kinds of stuff. Whereas microdosing, you don't have any of that.
So does this plug into the reason why you are trying to get a listing on the JSE? I mean, we do need to introduce this to the South African audiences, right? Because a listing, an IPO means you're asking for people's investment. So keep us on that journey and let me know, you know, in terms of listing. Right. How do you get there?
So getting back to that, I had to go this route so that you can understand where the company's thinking is already.
Yeah, no, I'm picking it up.
So we are not a cannabis company. We are not a psychedelic company. We are, and I'll start filling in the gaps for you now so that you can see where we're going.
Sure.
And I won't tell you everything because there's still stuff that we want to keep secret.
Sure.
But in a nutshell, the reason why we're going public is we we want to bring a solution to market whereby I understand who you are as an individual. Now, this is not new. It's been talked about for the last 20 years. Individualized nutrition, individualized healthcare, individualized, all of these things. So, but it's not been done properly. So, and nobody's done it in the way that we are going to be doing it. So what this means is I need to understand your genetic makeup. I need to understand your lab results. So your bloods, your urine, your hair, your everything I analyze. From there, I need to understand genetically you might have problems, but you might not be expressing it. So we need to understand those, understand why, and then understand how do we treat the ones that you are expressing. So then what we do is we have the pharmaceutical side. When I say pharmaceutical side, the biotech and pharmaceutical side that can produce certain substances, whether scheduled or non-scheduled, to give you as an individual, because now I know who you are. I know this thing will help you, this thing won't help you.
Yeah.
One step further to that, we have worked with Russian and American doctors to re-engineer old technology, but into something that is now accessible to everybody, right? It's a device this big. It's exactly this size. This is my Apple mouse. It's not this one. So it's that size, but that device was introduced to me again by that same friends in America.
Yeah.
While he was doing he's also got a company where they manufacture a daytime and a nighttime drink that you can take to help you sleep, and one that gives you energy. So the one time when I visited him, he said to me, "No, I'm busy with these formulations, and I found this technology whereby I do a baseline. So before you take my substance or my shake or whatever you call it, I do a baseline that gives me all your body markers, your nervous system markers. Then I give you my solution, and half an hour later, I run it again and I show you exactly what it did to your body."
Interesting.
Right? So whether it moved you from a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state, or vice versa, or what it did to your stress levels, or all of that, right? Sure. So we partnered up with doctors. There's a whole technology side to our business that people don't know about. So we've redeveloped that technology into a small device that will now be available to people to have at home. So, and then that reads into a central database, basically, where we can track you. So as soon as we start seeing something is going down, you're trending badly, we can intervene with you and say, "Hey, you know what, let's try this. Yeah, so this is, I'm not going into all the detail, but it's not only through that device, because I know skeptics will be like, this guy's talking nonsense. We can't do that. This is not a diagnosis. This is purely one of many monitoring tools. And then what we do, so we work with doctors in America. What we then do is we bring all of this information together. And then we say, okay, not us, the doctors, they look at it and they say to us, okay, based on all of this information, this is what we can see. Common areas of concern. Let's start going there and fixing that. So it's a point in the direction. It's not a diagnosis, but with all the technologies combined, we integrate, for example, into these guys, the ring for the sleep. So now we can check, okay, there's problems sleeping. Why? And the thing is, if we have the data, we have something that we can work from. So then we can say, you know what, we need a blood test. Go for a blood test. Send us that result. Then we put that in and be like, that is what we thought. Let's fix this here. So what we going towards is a service whereby we take you as a person and you decide which journey you are on, whether it's health, performance, or longevity. And you can at any time pivot. So you might come in where you have certain health issues, but we might resolve those, and you might say, hey, you know what, now I want to perform better at work. I don't want to have a foggy brain. I want to wake up when I wake up in the morning and not be tired.
Sure.
I want to be able to perform physically and mentally. And hey, by the by, I want to live extra 10 years if I can.
Well, yeah, I see a
so
lot of that development, in the news of big companies like Amazon looking into these, age extension
yep,
companies and stuff like that. So
yep,
I totally get that there are companies that are really throwing investment into this. But I'm glad that you brought up the technology and the, really going through it in terms of the medical side, because that I think that's what makes a lot of people anxious, because people say psilocybin can cure depression, for example, or help that,
yep,
right? But then
yeah,
some people say, what happens if you give someone psilocybin and they go the other way instead of the positive way?
yes,
So I'm glad that you brought up that whole medical side of kind of mapping the person out to make sure that these things are not going to
yes,
send them to
yes,
the other extremes. So you're saying that science is
exactly.
is like totally fleshed out, right?
Will it ever be?
Well, look,
So,
I totally get your point, and I bring it up again to say, people take sleeping pills to get on some sort of, flight to go to sleep for 20
yeah,
hours, and even those
yes.
things are, people take things without thinking about it,
Thinking about it.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. People do things because, you know, the most, let me give you a stat, and
Hmm.
then maybe it will make sense what I'm trying to say to you.
Hmm.
And this is the power of the media. There is, they estimate 350 million people suffering from depression globally,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
They estimate that every 1 minute 40 seconds there's a suicide due to depression, right? That gives you a stat of around about 1 million people a year that commit suicide because of depression.
Incredible.
Okay, so put that million here.
Yeah.
Now put COVID.
Yeah.
4.5 million people in the last year passed away from COVID. All right,
Hmm.
20 to 25% is passing away from depression.
Hmm.
Look at the emphasis that's on COVID versus emphasis on depression.
Yeah.
So it's just something to think about.
100%,
So
man. Look,
it's
I'm behind you 100%. I've just heard of a 14-year-old that's committed suicide. This is how bad things are
yes,
getting, right? This is how bad
yes.
people's minds are in these confined spaces that they've been placed in. So I totally get that. I totally get that. In terms of bringing a product to the South African population, how many years are we away from that kind of thing? Because, a lot of what you say, people are going to say, damn, this sounds like I need it almost yesterday, right?
Yes. So just before, that stat I just gave you was pre-COVID.
Jeez.
So it's much worse now. So
Right.
so to answer your question in terms of South Africa and how to get it here. So we have a meeting with the regulator in this month to discuss the method. So legislation or the legal framework allows for us to get product to the end user. It's now, but it's a very cumbersome process and
Hmm.
it's very administratively taxing. So we are discussing with them, how do we simplify that so that we can bring product to the local market? So we are working on that. What we have done, which I haven't mentioned to you, is we have partnered with Vaal University of Technology.
Hmm.
So partnered is the wrong word. Collaborating. We are collaborating with them. So they help us with our formulation and product development on the cannabis side. So
Mm.
at least you know that the products that we'll be producing is not just, okay, we're extracting the cannabis and now we're putting it in a sesame oil or MCT oil or whatever, and there you go, thank you very much. It's not the case. So we literally look at what is it that we get after the extraction,
Hmm.
where do we want to end up with, and we add certain components to it, we formulate it, and then we add a delivery mechanism
Hmm.
so that it's more bioavailable for you. So that when you take it, the effect that it has on you is really a medicinal effect, and it helps. The absorption is perfect. So that's why we partnered with them. So with all of that in mind, we are discussing with SAPRA a way forward in terms of how do we get it to patients in South Africa. So that's on the cannabis side. Mm-hmm. On the psychedelic side, on the psilocybin side, it is moving. There's a global movement with all of these products, if I can call it, plant-based products, plant-based medicines. Yeah. Cannabis was the first one to open the door, but the rest are all marching in. All of them are coming. So if you look at Canada, are now issuing licenses for research purposes on psychedelics, on specifically mushrooms. Yeah. If you look at Colorado, they've opened up Oakland, which is like, I don't get how the Americans do their things, but it's within California state. It's in San Francisco. Across the river, you get Oakland. They have their own rules. So I don't know if it's a county or whatever you call it, but they've opened up certain plant-based things. So you can now get ayahuasca. You can get, so ayahuasca is also psychedelic. It's a mixture of two different things. And that comes from the Incas, and they all used that back in the day. But if you listen to where psychedelics come from, you'll understand why people are scared of it and why media portrays it as be careful of it. It's been like that forever. In the past, it was said that psychedelics enhances your brain ability and it allows you to communicate with the gods, right? And this was the belief back then, right? And what they then said is, but we don't want everybody to be able to communicate with God. So they said, no, that psychedelics are only allowed for this circle of people. So if you want to speak to God, you have to go through these guys. This is the Incas. That's how they did it. So but you can look through the history, and this is you'll find it in that book. They explain it very nicely. I'm not the best explainer. So, but then you start understanding why people are scared of psychedelics. And in the book, which is, sorry, off topic, but very interesting. Yeah. We are not the only species that take psychedelics. So, which is and they explain it. There's a YouTube video, and these guys did research on dolphins, and they said by accident they found this what happened, and then they did more research and they saw this is quite a frequent occurrence. So what happened was they had a camera, and you can find it on YouTube. They had a camera filming dolphins in like their, I want to call it private space. And what they found was what they did was they were playing with a pufferfish. And at a certain point, the pufferfish excretes its poison. And the dolphins will then swim through this poison, which will give them a high. And then they will like just lie in the water tripping. Wow. So and in this book, this guy also asked the question. So he says, well, why would an animal, and this is not the only guys that does that. There's plenty of animals that does similar things, right? Why would an animal that has predators do something like this if it's life-threatening? Why would it trip? Why would it go into a psychedelic state? Right. So, and there's people that believe that back in the day, before we started evolving, we ate psychedelics, and that enabled the brain to grow more pathways, and that's why we evolved. Right. So, just on that same topic, they are now doing trials where they're using psychedelics like mushrooms for people with brain damage, because certain part of the brain might be damaged. So what they now do is they're using psychedelics to try and build more pathways so that person can get better. Yeah, so
I've heard that. I've heard that, like psilocybin might help you stop smoking, for example, one day, right? Like you could treat somebody that way.
Okay, so there's a small short story.
Yeah, let's go. I'm ready for
I can
it.
carry on forever. So there was a research study done. So back in the day when they discovered LSD by accident, they did a clinical study where they said it can cure alcoholism, right? Now, there's something that you need to understand when you take psychedelics. There's two main factors, set and setting. This is the first thing they'll teach you. Set is, what is your mindset when you go in? And this is why they have these, call it a sitter, that will take you through the journey. So they will sit with you and they'll say to you, this is what you can expect. When you are confronted with call it your demon, you must just attack it and it will disappear. So they help you through that process. So that is your mindset when you go in. The second thing is setting. So where do you do it? So when you do psychedelics, normally the best environment will be in nature. Everybody will say to you, you want to be in nature, right? So they did these sessions, clinical studies, back in the 60s. So where they took people, put them on an LSD trip. This is people with alcoholism, right? Alcoholics. They put them in a nice setting and they got their mindsets right and they cured them. They stopped having those addictions. So then they published these papers and said, guys, clinical study this, we've done it with LSD. LSD is amazing.
Yeah.
Big Pharma turned around and said, no, it's not LSD that cured them. And we'll prove it. What they did, now remember the most important things here, set and setting.
Yeah.
They took 10 guys or whatever the number was, guys with suffering from alcoholism. They put them in straitjackets in a dark room alone.
Yeah.
And they left them there and gave them LSD. They left them there and then they came back later and they said, see, it didn't cure alcohol. You can see all these guys, they're probably drinking more now. So
yeah, they're like, kill me.
So for any person, that will be a traumatic experience. I can tell you that. Yeah. But that just shows you the power of it. So it is not this is not a recreational thing. You do not, and anybody that uses psychedelics will tell you on a like, I'm not talking microdosing, I'm saying like a bigger trip. They will say to you, it is probably one of the best experiences, life-changing experiences of my life, but it is not something I want to do anytime soon again.
Okay.
So it is I haven't done it again after that first one. So
okay, interesting.
Not on that level, because it is I've done microdosing, yes, but on that level, it is a very emotional thing. It's a life-changing experience. Wow. But you don't want to change your life every weekend. Like you'll do it once a year, maybe. So,
well, I mean, that's one of those things you never know. With there's some people that might like that kind of thing, but like real psychos type of thing. But listen, I mean, I've got a cactus here growing here that, I mean, you could take off my hands if you want. I hear that it's got some, like, you can make a tea out of it or something like that, and then
mescaline one.
I'm not sure what it is. I've been told. I'll send you a photo later, but it sounds like you're in the right industry.
I'm in that industry, but I'm not the expert.
Yes, I feel you. But you know what? As we wrap up this conversation, I think we've encapsulated a lot of what we wanted to speak about, and in that like psychedelic way, we've gone off of the script and we felt around for the answers and everything. It was a very euphoric experience talking to you, Gabriel. But I wanted to know, with your and kind of ending it off, with your company. And the growth that you are wanting to see out of it in the next couple of years, is there nation building potential for the industry at large? Because that's kind of what Quintessential Zeta is all about. I call it nation building in a quintessentially South African way, and that obviously is a really, really open door, right? I mean, it's open to interpretation. of what real nation building is. Tell me, when you started this, did you have nation building in mind? Can this industry, psychedelic, well, psilocybin and cannabis, can this help South Africa? Because I've heard some people's opinions on it. I want to get yours.
So, yeah, I think you need to first understand cannabis and where we are as a country currently with legislation. So currently what they did was they said, okay, it was a Schedule 7, now it's a Schedule 6, where I'm talking THC, right? Mm-hmm. So that is a Schedule 6 narcotic. The only way for you to be able to work with a narcotic is if you are on a pharmaceutical level, right? So they issued licenses to grow, but this is where it's very difficult, because you're growing something that it's the only plant in the world where the plant itself is considered a narcotic, even though it might, if a seedling has nothing in it, mm-hmm. but it's considered a Schedule 6 product or plant, right? Mm-hmm. Poppy, where you make all those things from, no problem. You can grow it. So I'm answering your question in a long way.
Sure.
So this is the problem that we are sitting with. So now you're sitting with a Schedule 6 plant, and this is where government's problem sits, because now you can't say, okay, let's open the recreational market.
Yeah.
Okay, how? Because now we're sitting with a Schedule 6 narcotic. Mm-hmm. We can't just say anybody can grow it and you can sell it freely in a shop to someone that's 18 years old. It's a Schedule 6 drug. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that needs to happen is bring the scheduling down. That's number one. Before they do that, recreational market is not going to get in. Okay, first thing. Right. Yeah. So, which means you excluding a lot of players in the field. The second step is, okay, so in America, what they've done is there's pharmaceutical. You need to be on a pharmaceutical grade when you grow and extract. That's where we are at now, right? Mm-hmm. Recreational, you can grow, you can extract, you can do whatever you want, but that's on a food grade level. So the weirdest thing is you walk into a dispensary. In the front, you have the pharmaceutical side where you need to produce your card or whatever so that you can buy it.
Yeah.
You walk through, and this is a dispensary for adult use where you can buy everything that's on that side, and the pharmaceutical side you can buy here.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a mind twister.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. So that's your second level. So that's your recreational side. Mm. Then there's your third tier, and that is your industry side, or your industrial side, where you can grow for fiber, for the seeds for protein or whatever the case, or feeding or whatever. There's so many other products that you can make out of that, from paper to bricks to you name it.
Yeah.
You can make out of hemp or hemp fibers. The difference between hemp and cannabis is identical plant. Mm-hmm. The only difference is the THC content. So if the THC is less than a certain amount, it's considered hemp. If it's more, it's considered cannabis.
Okay.
Mind blowing.
Yes.
So to answer your question, is there a gap or how is this a nation building industry? Yes, it is, provided that the legislation allows for it.
Okay.
So as long as we are stuck with the current legislation, no. It's a very, the wrong word to use is elitist environment. It's a pharmaceutical environment. You have to, the barrier to entry is very high.
Yeah.
So it's not in reach for everybody, and it will not be for as long as it's at that schedule. So the easy way to do it is to deschedule it and say, if you want to create a pharmaceutical product or a medical grade product, go that route. You have pharmaceuticals using products that is on a pharmaceutical grade and they sell it as a pharmaceutical product. Yet you might have something in the food industry where they use the same thing in a lesser concentration, argument's sake, but it's on a food grade level. So that is what needs to happen to cannabis for it to be your nation building industry.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you talk about that regulatory side. And, you know, if we are comparing, I mean, on this show, I've had crypto guys, you know, because they want cryptocurrencies to potentially be the future of how people save their money, for example. And the regulation side in South Africa and the world probably is undeveloped to make things happen. But in your opinion, you think maybe the South African government can begin implementing certain things that they might have implemented in certain states in the United States, right? What is that? So you say just that descheduling is the first hurdle, and then you can start to plan even more, right?
So that's in my opinion. So I can't see any other way for them to be able, without opening up a can of worms for themselves. So if they do this, so I was at a lecture, if I can call it that, where they spoke to a legal advisor, and he said, "Here's the thing: what the ruling meant when they said you are allowed to use cannabis at your own house." In your private space, call it private space. You're allowed to grow it, you're allowed to use it because it's your body, you can choose, right? The problem with that, and for us it's not a problem, for me it's this is the opportunity, but the problem with what they did with that can opener is, how do you now say, okay, but the same can't apply to if you want to do mushrooms? And the same can't apply if you want to do LSD or cocaine or whatever, because it is your human right to do whatever you want to do, as long as it's in your private space and it can't hurt anybody else. Why am I not allowed to take whatever? This was from a legal advisor that said this. So if you interpret that ruling, it opens up the door for argument for all of these other things, because it is your constitutional right to have access to everything. So then it's government's position or responsibility to make it safe for me to, the fact that the substance itself might not be safe. Look at alcohol, look at tobacco, look at caffeine. If you look at alcohol, it is more toxic. And it is more, it's the same, let's just remember my graph. It's toxicity and habit forming. So addictiveness, right?
Sure.
It's the same addictiveness as cannabis, but it is more toxic than cannabis, almost double, right?
Yeah.
Alcohol. And they say there's something wrong with cannabis. Now on the same graph, if you look at where does LSD and psilocybin fall? Virtually no toxicity. You need to eat about, I think it was 3.9 pounds of magic mushrooms to get to a toxicity level.
That's crazy.
Good luck eating that. Good luck eating that much. So it's virtually not toxic, and LSD is not toxic nor habit forming. So they can't argue that these things are bad for you because it's been proven it's not toxic and it's not habit forming. So way less than caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, and those things. So that ruling opened up that can of worms.
And I think, you know, while we've had this conversation, right, I'm pretty sure someone has gone out there and bought some, you know, weed on the black market, right? Even in this country. I mean, and that's the irony of it. You know, next to, I've seen teenagers, I'm not even joking, I've seen teenagers buy weed next to the hospital from somebody who's just mooching around and selling it there. So I think that's the irony here, and I think our whole conversation has been about let's get that regulation together, because we all want to play ball, but we want to play ball in within the confines of what is legal. But the wheels of justice, even in this, turn slowly, right? And I guess that's
slow.
Yeah.
And to maybe close off, let's take two examples. In countries where they've pushed up taxes to try and get more taxes, they get less taxes because people find other ways to move their money elsewhere, and not pay taxes. Same applies to if you make something illegal. If you make something illegal, you're not stopping people from using it. The only difference is you can't tax it, you can't regulate it, you are flying in the dark. It's still happening. It's not going to, just because it's illegal. I mean, how long is it? From when I grew up, it was illegal. Yet, when I was in school, I had a brownie, like a cannabis brownie back then.
Yeah, space cookie.
It was illegal. Yeah, a space cookie. So the thing is, even though it's illegal, you're not stopping it. Yeah. But it's like cutting your nose to spite your face type of scenario. But you make it legal and then you regulate. Then you have control.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, listen, Gabriel, you've been a wealth of knowledge on this topic, and I see that you guys do upload some blog content onto your website that even has further breakdowns of this, because I think information is power, and I think the more that you speak to guys out there, I think the more they will be won over, and the regulators might start waking up. Tell us, is that psilocybin.co.za, right?
No, .com.
Is it .com? So, we're global.
Yeah. so we had a .co.za, which was just the cultivation side, and then we had a .com, which was more the holdings entity, which is a Netherlands-based entity. But this is currently just a shell, but we moved everything to .com. So there's now one site. I know Google's indexed both, but everything will go to the .com site. And
perfect.
We are trying to build it out to be a bit more intuitive and informing. And people can subscribe on there, and we'll keep them up to date with all the new latest things that's happening.
Perfect. I'll put that in the description, and then everyone can click through it, and even more Google indexing can occur. That'll be good for you guys.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Gabriel, last word before we go.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been really nice to just chat about it calmly and getting the word out. I think we need more of these type of chats so that people can start asking questions, and just to get the mindset change, to be like, you know what, I always thought this of psych. I was that guy 3 years ago that said, I made the call to say, I'm staying with druggies. Today, I will tell you, as soon as you start doing the research and you start getting the information, it will open your eyes, and you'll be like, oh my word, there's a whole world out there that is not as terrifying as people made it out to be.
Yeah.
You can investigate it yourself, and there's so much content around this everywhere, on YouTube, everywhere. It's really, once you start going down this route, it is a phenomenal place. It will change your life.
Very intriguing, Gabriel. Thank you for joining the Quintessential Show. You know what? I think whatever products you are making in the future, let's agree that we'll collaborate on a quintessential strain of cannabis or something like that. A little bit of a joint venture. Don't forget about us, because I'm certainly not going to forget about you after this chat, because you've given us a lot to process, but in a good way. I think a lot of people might be researching after this. Gabriel, thank you so much. That is CEO of Psilocybin, and that is Gabriel Theron. Gabriel, have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Cheers.